Good evening. Today is the 4th of February, 2020, and it's 6:30 in the evening. Our expectation tonight is to go into an executive session at 6:30 and hopefully getting back on the air by 7 p.m. So with that said, according to the Attorney General's purposes, we will go into Purpose 6, to consider the purpose, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair so declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and I do so declare.
Motion to.
My next question is, can I get a motion?
Motion to go on executive.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Mr. Hajar?
Aye.
Mr. Plasko?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Maloney?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes, so we will now go into executive session and be back on the air for the regular meeting, hopefully by 7 p.m. Thank you all. Good evening and welcome back to the February 4th meeting of the Norwood Board of Selectmen. We have been in negotiations for the last half hour, executive session-wise, and now we've exited executive session and we're going into our regular meeting. So as always, let us begin this evening with a pledge of allegiance to the flag, followed by a silent moment of prayer and reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all, and please be seated. All right, first appointment is running a little bit late. We should have started at 7. We have a show cause hearing with Let's Eat Norwood, LLC, DBA Sky Restaurant Bar, 1369 Providence Highway Turnpike. It is alleged there was a violation of Chapter 138, Section 64, sale of an alcoholic beverage to a person under the age of 21. And I will begin. What we're going to do here is going to hear from the testimony from the police department. I'll hear from the Sky Restaurant. And if there's any interested parties around here that want to give any kind of a testimony, we'll take that also. Detective Green, would you start off, please?
Good evening. On Monday, October 21st, 2019, Officer Whitmore and myself were conducting liquor checks of all the licensed establishments in the town of Norwood using an underage operative. Prior to us going out, we had the operative read and sign a buyer release form. He read the written guidelines our department has for conducting liquor compliance checks. He was also instructed to purchase or attempt to purchase alcoholic beverages without producing his ID, but if asked, he was told he could produce his actual Massachusetts driver's license. At the time, the operative had a vertical license and a date of birth in 2001. So at this time, he was 17 years old. The license states the day that he turned 21. Prior to leaving the station, he was given a portable breathalyzer test, registered a 0.0. Again, at the end of all compliance checks, he took another portable breathalyzer test, registered 0.0. Prior to beginning, he was searched to make sure he had no other money, no other IDs on him. And he was given money provided by us where we noted the serial numbers. During this night, we used two $20 bills. So at about 5:57 p.m., he entered the Sky Restaurant. And about one minute later or so, he came back out, came over directly in my vehicle, told me that he had went up to the bar, ordered a Bud Light from the only female bartender working. She asked for his ID, produced it, gave it to her. She gave it back, and she proceeded to give him a Bud Light. After that, I went in, saw the Bud Light on the bar. Bartender, she was identified as Marguerite Moran, saw me. She immediately went to the back, which when I spoke with the manager at the time, informed her what had happened, and the report would be filed with the town.
Thank you, Detective Green. Parkin, would you introduce yourself and your position as well as the young lady?
Sure. My name's Steve Corcoran. I'm the owner of Sky Restaurant. With me tonight is Erica Johnson, the manager of the restaurant, as well as the manager on duty that night.
Okay, would one of you like to explain the whole evening to us, if you could?
Well, before we do that, I'll let Erica explain the night. I'd just like to, number one, apologize to the board for this situation happening. I've been the owner of Sky for 18 years. This is the first time anything like this has ever happened. I'm very embarrassed about it, and I want to assure the board that this is not indicative of the type of establishment that we run, the type of establishment that Erica manages, and it's not something that we take this very seriously, and we've taken some measures to make sure or to further prevent this from happening in the future.
Thank you, sir. And you have other restaurants under your domain?
I do. I own 3 restaurants in Franklin, Mass.
So this is nothing new to you. You've been at it for a while.
That's right. Yeah.
And you've done a very good job here in Norwood. To
Well,
the best
thank
of
you.
my knowledge, there have been no other offenses.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, as far as when we hire all our staff, we make sure before they wait on anybody, they are tip certified. They don't go on there. So she came in already tip certified as an experienced bartender. She obviously did not do the right thing and was let go immediately. I actually took over and bartended for the rest of the night.
That's it? Mr. Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you said you made corrective actions. What are those corrective actions?
Yeah, so, well, in addition to everyone being tip certified, we also put every new hire through our in-house training program where they're instructed to, we train them that anyone under 30 years old is required to be carded, ask for ID. And in fact, as you heard, the bartender did do that night. So her training did work. Unfortunately, she looked at the ID, and even though it says in 2 spots on the ID that the individual's under 21 in red, she still served them the beer. But it's good for us that, at least that we know that the training did in fact work, and that it was an isolated case of human error, that she made a mistake and she actually served them. So, in addition to continuing to do our in-house training, we met with each individual server and bartender and went through again our policies of making sure that everyone is carded under 30 years old, and just reiterated the fact that they have to be alert, and it happens every single day that we're open. They have to be responsible. They have to make sure that these policies and procedures are being followed, and that they, are alert and they have their brain on. It just is mind-blowing that she actually took the ID, looked at it. Clearly, the guy was under 21. He was 17 years old, and she still gave him the beer. So we did that. We bought these calendars that show, it's the born on date calendar, it's called. So, and we have 2 of those in different places in the restaurant as another measure to just be a constant focus for every server and bartender, that it's at the forefront of their mind every day that they're on the floor.
But it's simpler than that. This was a vertical license.
Exactly.
She asked for the license, but she didn't look at it. She took it in her hand, but
Yeah.
she didn't look. She couldn't have looked at it
She didn't.
because she would have
Yeah.
seen the 2 red spots or the vertical license. I can't say it enough. I mean,
It couldn't be easier. I agree.
to me, I would have a big sign somewhere that not with the public, but where the servers go by regularly, showing a vertical license, for crying out loud. I
They,
mean,
they actually sign that calendar that we have. Every day they have to sign it as another
yeah, the
ID.
calendar,
Yeah.
but it's
We do.
easier than that. I
Yeah.
mean, even if someone is of age and still has a vertical license, they don't have to be served.
Yeah,
They don't have
Exactly.
to be. So I'm saying, the vertical license should be stop. Right there. Then
Agreed.
you don't even have to look at it anymore. It's a vertical license.
I can't explain it.
we-
It couldn't be
No,
simple.
we've had a half a dozen of these. I mean, we've had a lot of positive inspections of businesses, but we've had a half a dozen of the same thing for people. Maybe it's a busy night or something, I don't know, but they take the license, but they don't look at it. I mean, they say, okay, he has a license, I'm gonna serve him, you know?
I think that's what the point where, you know, we do what we do all the training that we can do, I believe. And at some point, it becomes the individual responsibility. And in this case, that individual did not uphold their responsibility. And so our reaction was an immediate termination, because we just don't want somebody like that. I mean, it was a fairly benign situation, fortunately. But, you know, we can't have anybody like that
No.
working for us. So that's why we made that move as well.
Well, I think you're trying hard, sir, and I thank you
Oh,
for that.
thank you. We tried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Mr. Hajar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, thank you for coming forward.
Sure.
And appreciate the fact that you owned up to it and took responsibility. I do go on your track record, 18 years, spotless record. That's awesome. I'll take a little different approach than you did, and I'll say that to me this is partly a failure of training. If she could not understand what Mr. Howard explained, and that is you're not even required to serve someone with a vertical license. A lot of places have their own internal policy that says, I don't care what age you are, if you give us a vertical license, you're not going to be served. I don't know if that's your rule or not. But it failed her because, did she give a reason, did the server give a reason why she served the individual after looking at the license? Did you ask her that?
I personally
What was her
did.
response?
She said that, she just said, I did the math quick in my head. She didn't, I then said, it's a vertical license, he's 17 years old. She just said, I messed up, I did the math in my head. As I went to go turn around to open the beer, I was doing it again in my head, and he was gone. So, you know, when the detective did walk in, she was freaking out. She knew that she had
But to your point,
done something
there's
wrong.
no math that needs to be done.
There is no math that needs to be done. That's the whole point of the
Correct.
vertical license,
Yeah,
is the state has actually made it very easy for everybody.
yeah.
As for the police who are doing compliance checks, and
Yeah.
for you that are required, you know, that really have to train or be responsible for the training, is you just say, if it's this way, you don't accept it. I don't care if you're 29. If someone's showing that vertical license, I don't have to pay attention to it. You're not going to be served. If it's horizontal, you're legal. You're over 21. So I really can't understand why servers can't really grasp that concept. But I'll thank you for being honest. Thank you for your good track record. But to me, that training failed her. If she has to mentally engage herself into whether that was actually 21 years of age or older, she didn't get it. For whatever reason, she
Agreed.
didn't get the training.
We do have a picture of a vertical license. It is on our bulletin board. You have to walk by it to go anywhere, and it's also where the calendar is that they have to sign before they go on the floor. That has been there before anything happened. It shows, you know, that it's under 21, everything about that. There's a nice big picture of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So when they step behind that bar, they know there is a date given. Anything after this date, before this date.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Mr. Maloney, sir?
Just a couple of things, you know, Mr. Corcoran, Ms. Johnson, just we do support the police in this compliance check thing. Make sure everybody on staff knows that the town is, as long, even as in a case where we have a spotless record, and this is the first violation ever with you, as long as we keep getting people failing these, we're going to put them out on the street and tell you people that. Tell them that the town does it, you know. And my guess is, people are asking why. My guess is that she wanted the business. You know, it's probably, you don't make any money unless you're doing business, and she took a chance and it failed. Just tell them that you can blame us. Just blame the towns. You know, they get these compliance folks out all the time. Do not take chances on this stuff, even if it's a friend of yours. Don't take any chances. That's all. That should be it. But anyway, it's a teachable moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I see it as the same, a teachable moment. I'm not going to preach to either one of you because you already know what's at stake here, what has been at stake for 18 years. So I commend you on the 18 years of service to the town in an appropriate manner. Any other further questions from the board? See, we move to close the hearing. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Howard.
I make a motion that we give a verbal warning on this offense.
Second.
I have a motion for verbal warning, not written, but verbal. Verbal warnings do not go to the ABCC. With that said, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Verbal it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you,
Appreciate it.
Detective Green.
Thanks.
Now, we have a second one.
One more.
Well, it won't take long, trust me on this one. Do you know if there's anybody else out there? Could you just check?
There's not.
Okay.
Ouch.
Here's what has happened. Let me open this up. First, this is a show cause hearing, and I failed to do this at the beginning. Could the clerk read the notice, please? Public notice? Bear with me on this.
Stephanie Leary is manager of record of Marriott Corporation, DBA Courtyard by Marriott. You are hereby given formal notice that the Board of Selectmen, acting as local licensing authority, will hold a show cause hearing on Tuesday, February 4th, 2020, at 7 p.m. in the Selectmen's Chambers to consider whether your license to sell alcoholic beverages should be suspended, limited, or revoked on violation of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 64, as reported by the Norwood Police Department, the alleged sale of alcoholic beverages to a person under the age of 21. The basis upon which such action will be considered occurred on Monday, October 21st, 2019. Enclosed, please find a copy of the police report for your information. You're required to attend, as well as any staff involved in the transaction. Be prepared to, at that time, to present all relevant information concerning the charges. Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, ma'am. Obviously, you've noticed there's nobody else here but yourself, so I just want the record to show that the police department is present. We received correspondence late this afternoon, very late, that individuals representing the Marriott Courtyard would not be able to be here this evening. And they went to a second attorney and a third attorney, but nobody's available. So we've had communications with them, and if it's okay with the Norwood Police Department, we would like to continue this hearing, not close it, but continue the hearing for 1 week from tonight,
So, yeah, the time,
7.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. So it's our indication, a week from tonight, 7 p.m., we'll have all parties interested in the Marriott Courtyard here for that hearing.
Second to that motion, if there isn't one.
So I have a motion
Yes.
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so it's continued till 1 week from tonight. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Detective.
Can I have a motion to close that hearing?
So moved.
No, not
No,
closing.
continue.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
Continue, that's right.
It's continued, we're not going to close it. You're absolutely correct. I knew I wasn't going to go the whole night. All right, with that said, that concludes our appointments for the evening. So if we could get into new business under Article Number 1, March meetings. There are 5 Tuesdays in March. Does the board wish to cancel one of the meetings, because normally we only meet 4 Tuesdays a month?
Mr. Chair,
Sir?
I make a motion that we do not have a meeting on March 17, which is St. Patty's Day, and I think poor timing for the meeting.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second it on the motion.
On the motion, sir?
Thank you. Does that, I'm just going to throw this out to Mr. Plasko, maybe Mr., or anybody here really, does that date have anything in conflict with what we discussed in executive session?
No.
No, it does
Is
not.
that all right? Okay, all right, very good.
Well, does it have anything to do with, we were trying to do something at the end of the month for,
We've talked about that, and that's, we're going to discuss
We're
that.
just gonna reschedule it to a little bit later in the
okay,
year.
okay.
Or we're gonna make it bigger
And better.
and better.
So I have a motion to release ourselves from the 17th of March meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Number 2, cemetery deeds for the review and signature of the board, and we have 3 of them.
Motion to sign?
Second?
Motion to sign and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. Number 3, Mary Lou Follen, Town Clerk, submitting March 3rd, 2020 presidential primary warrant for the signature of the board. Motion to sign?
Motion to sign, Mr. Chair.
Second?
Can I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Number 4, Sonia Ramos, General Manager of Jake and Joe's, 475 Providence Highway Turnpike, submitting a request for an extension of hours until 2 a.m. on Sunday, February 23rd, 2020, to show a Las Vegas boxing event that starts on Saturday, February 22nd, 2020, but could go past the regular closing time due to the time difference on the other coast. The back gate will remain closed, and they will have a police detail, and if the match is canceled for any reason or the event is over during normal business hours, the late closing will be rescinded. We've done this many times in the past. Motion?
Question?
I'll make the motion first, so we can talk about it, right?
Second.
Okay, go ahead.
On the motion?
Yes, on the motion. Maybe I'm just confusing myself with the wording here. They say that it might be extended because of the time difference, extend beyond 2 PM, 2 AM?
Our time is going to be different from their time out
Never
there.
be past 2 AM our time.
Right.
Right,
Because we don't have
right,
authority.
no matter what. If it goes till 3 o'clock, we're shutting them down at 2 a.m.
No, I was just gonna say, we don't even have authority, so that's fine.
Should say
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Number 5, Niall Connors, Franchise Service Manager for Verizon, submitting Verizon New England's 2019 Form 500 Annual Compliance Filing. This basically is how many complaints have you gotten over the year and how have you rectified those complaints? Basically what it means.
File for information.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to file for as information. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Number 6, Tony Mizuko, General Manager, Town of Norwood, submitting a request from Superintendent Travis Farley regarding recommendations for the Lower Balch Playground area. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board's aware, last year at town meeting, we approved a project to redo over part of what we would call the Lower Balch area. There's a small playground there that is really, it's about 20 years old. It's at the end of its useful life. There's some rusting, there's some damaged equipment. It's really not in great shape. There's another playground available at the Balch. So Mr. Farley looked it over, and his recommendation, and I agree with it, is that we just remove that as part of the project. Doesn't require any additional money. It doesn't require any going back to town meeting or the CPC, but because there is some playground equipment there that we'd be permanently removing and decommissioning, we just wanted the board in their capacity as Parks Commissioners to be aware of that and then to be okay with that.
Makes total sense to me. Do I have a motion from the board or any questions from the board?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to give permission to do that, as requested by Mr. Farley. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Number 7, Morse House, updated rules and regulations for review and approval of the board. Mr. Jha?
Yes. Just take 1 more, 2, 3, 4. Don't want to be confusing, but there's one more that we'd like to include. So after a few people had filled out the application and looked at some of the rules, a couple of issues came back that people thought should be either better clarified or stated because it's not stated. Bill brought one forward that talked about there's no closing time in the rules, and although we could make sure through the application process that no one puts past 10 o'clock, it's probably better just to tell them up front that, you know, we close at 10. So the first correction was to correct the spelling error. The second one is to, in talking with Dave DeLuca, our town council, using the word property after the Morse House to clarify the usage of the entire premises and not just a particular house. New sections would be 2N, talks about even though state law doesn't permit candles, it's a good idea to tell them up front, you know, there's no lit candles in the building or within, we'll say 10 feet of the building, except for if someone's doing a birthday cake or an anniversary cake and they want lit candles, that's pretty typical. Another was to add the end time of 10 p.m. And if they can't get out in 30 days, to just leave now and come back the next day to finish it, as there are neighbors on either side. They don't need to be kept up, especially if it's during the week. We talk about the key, how the key situation is, because there's nothing in there that talks about how people get in, how people get out. So until we actually have an assessment then that talks about security and this board decides what it wants to do, this is the preferable way to deal with it. Section 5G is what town council is recommending as an additional example of how or why we would deny a permit, and he believes that the wording gives the board flexibility to do that. And then what I just handed out was one for no smoking in or near the facility. That matches the policy approved for other town buildings by the Personnel Board and the Board of Health. a couple years ago, or actually 3 years ago in 17, so this is the same wording, so it's nothing new, just so that we're consistent. Other than that, I think we're in good shape, no one hidden, so. That's it from my end, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jar. Mr. Plasko?
Thank you. It all sounds fine to me, except for one question.
Yes,
So with candles,
yes,
you say within 10 feet? If we have this other lighting, cigars and all that, 15 feet, why isn't 15 in both cases, just to be consistent?
sure. I have no problem
Other
with
than
that.
that, everything's fine.
I have no problem with that. Thank you.
So moved?
Second.
What's the motion? I'm sorry.
On the motion, sir?
The motion is what?
To approve all the
To
changes
approve,
as
yeah,
read.
okay.
With
Thank
the
you.
one correction I just made on.
With that one correction, from 10 to
Good idea.
15 feet to correspond with the Board of Health regulation.
All righty.
Everybody understands the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Number 7 on our list, or I'm sorry, number 8 on our list, draft PBCC bylaw update, Permanent Building Committee update. For discussion, Mr. Hajar.
Yes, so part of the discussion by the Townwide Facilities Committee was if there was approval to move forward, which has been accepted by the end of last year, the board discussed now changing the bylaw that governs the PBCC to now allow for the facilities department to handle, manage projects up to a certain line, and then over that line, it would be the PBCC. So without getting too technical, there is language that allows flexibility on both sides. The idea is to create a centralized facilities management, give them the opportunity to manage and oversee projects from the get-go. If they're gonna start July 1st, I think it's important that they be given the necessary tools to do it. I don't think, whether the PPCC buys it or not, I think it's important that we outline clearly the distinction between the two groups. We want them to work together. It's supposed to be one town effort here, but I think we need to be clear on who's handling what. And the big issue is the design aspect, which we want our facilities department to manage and oversee to ensure that the clients don't always have to look over their shoulder that someone's changing it once it's approved. So what you have in front of you is pretty much what was recommended by the townwide. There were a couple of minor issues changed from other feedback. I know Bill has provided me with some specific feedback. Alan asked me some questions, and Paul Riccardi made some changes, as minor changes as well, just to ensure that the language is clear. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about the division of responsibilities or the concept as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hajar. Questions from the board? Mr. Maloney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was on the Facilities Committee myself and was involved in the drafting of the document, so I'm generally favorably disposed to it, although I do think we should not vote on it tonight for its approval, since the item on the agenda said discussion. But I'll go, just a couple of things, a couple of questions for everybody. Under Section 2 membership, we are excluding member of any board, okay? Appointed PBCC members shall not be an officer, official, paid town employee, or a member of any board. I mean, that would include people who are like on Trails Committee or Cultural Council or something? Do we?
No, I think we're talking about official name boards,
Okay.
not advisory committees like at Trails. That's,
Okay.
right. That
All
wasn't the intent, no.
Okay, all right. And then the only other one I had was the Section 6 financial requirements and notification, any client intends to propose a project shall provide information regarding the goals and financial requirements to the various groups involved at least 180 days in advance of the town meeting at which funding is requested. Does that strike anybody else as an awfully long time? As opposed to, say, 90 days?
Well, if I can, Mr. Chairman, the intent of the 180 days, if you remember, Tom, was to allow the facilities group to put some meat to some scope that they could then get a much better cost estimate on, rather than just something on the back of an envelope and bring in a contract and say, hey, what do you think, and talk concepts. They we would want something a little bit more specific that could be taken to town meeting to ensure that the numbers that we're getting are a little bit more solid rather than what we may or may not have received in the past.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Well, if everyone else is comfortable
Sorry.
with it, I am
Mr.
too.
Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you both. Mr. Howard, sir.
Is there a chance, maybe we could add to it and say, unless it's an urgent matter, you know, something like that, just to cover
well, it just
ourselves?
says, is it say 180 or up to 180? I mean, yes, you could, I guess, yes.
I'm just saying, just to
Yeah.
cover ourselves in case we have something urgent.
So we're not
Yeah.
locked into anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's the point.
You have a problem with that?
Thank you.
Mr., before you answer that question or bring in your comments, Mr. Plasko, let me ask you a question, if I could. My colleague brought up a good point. This is written here as for discussion this evening. Are we on solid ground if we take a vote, or should we put this off for a week? In your opinion?
I think you would be on solid grounds if you wanted to take a vote. I would ask that we not, but legally and so forth, I don't think you have any problem taking action, so chose.
Okay. And you had a comment to make?
Yeah, under section 2, membership, it says the PVCC appointments shall, mandatory, be made to include an architect, an engineer, and an individual who's primarily engaged in the construction industry. I think those are great goals, but there could be times when the vacancy is an architect and you can't find any architect to step forward at that time, and instead of leaving a vacancy, you might want to consider, you know, another engineer or someone different than that. I don't know if the word should be, you know, loosened up in some way instead of a mandatory to, you know, reasonable attempt should be made to see that the membership is comprised of these type of backgrounds. I don't know what the exact language would be. I think we used to have it, but I noticed the bylaw as it's
I think it's exactly
attached
worded the same, isn't
isn't there.
it? Yeah, I think it's worded the same. We didn't really change that aspect of it,
Yeah,
but
it just
those
seems too strict to me. But, so I would just throw that out for some consideration, if that could be loosened up in some way. The other thing is, I have some concerns about the timing, whether we really need to rush into this. At this time, I think most of what this calls for, although in and of itself, you know, is a fine document, we don't really have the facilities department up and running yet. We haven't seen a budget yet. We haven't talked to the facilities, proposed facilities manager, Mr. Riccardi. The schools could decide to pull out, and if we go and we change this bylaw, we could come around next year and have to change it again because there is no facilities department. It seems to me that we could go slower, that all of the things that are in here, I believe, most of the things at least, able to be accomplished with the current zoning bylaw and just, I mean, the current Permanent Building Construction Committee bylaw, and an agreement between the parties, including the Permanent Building Committee members, of how we'll proceed. And then if it all works out, we can adopt this at that time. If it doesn't work out, we can adjust it as necessary so that we really only do it once. And if there was a need to do it now, I would understand, but I just don't see that need. But I think before we take any action, like tonight, I don't think we should take action. I think we should wait till the budget period, have a discussion with Mr. Riccardi and all parties, and then get a better feel for it before deciding how to move forward.
well, if again, Mr. Riccardi has extensive say into the wording of this, and
Right.
is one that is really pushing to try to start on July 1st with him so that he has a little teeth to what he's able to do with the schools in the town. I'm a little puzzled by when you say the schools could pull out. I mean, I don't know how they would pull out. They've signed an agreement, both parties would have to agree to pull out, and if you're gonna hold that against it, it could be next year or 5 years, so I'm not sure that that's, to say that is
Well, I thought-
not sure footing. The way the agreement is
I
both
don't-
parties have to agree to
I
it.
don't have the agreement in front of me to fight over words, but my understanding was it was agreement to give it a try
No,
and move forward.
No.
And that if they weren't comfortable with it, they could just go back to town meeting and undo the
no,
budget.
no, that's not the way it reads.
Ms.
It
Mizuko,
starts
am I
July
correct to
1st.
assume that this goes in the contract as of July 1, 2020?
We are operating under the assumption
budget, rather, not
that
contract.
beginning July 1st, we will have a shared facilities department. I've been meeting with the team every other week. We do need to put together what a budget is going to look like and how we're going to propose to fund it, and that's going to go through town meeting. So there's some value to waiting in that respect. What Mr. Riccardi and I are focusing on, and Superintendent Thompson as well, is as of July 1st, things begin to change. We need every user, and that's everyone that uses a town or school building, so all of our employees and our students and everyone else, to see an increase in the level of service. We're doing this to be better at what we're doing, to give more to facilities users. So that's really our focus on the granular level. There's some small construction projects at the facilities department. As we envision it, it's going to help out with, to Mr. Plasko's point, Mr. Riccardi and I will be coming forward to the FinCom and the board and the school committee with this is how we want it to look and work year one. This is how we want to operationalize it. There's a value in waiting until we've done that and making sure that there's agreement on how we're going to actually make this work on the ground. And I think we can. We're all looking forward to it. The team is excited about it. So,
But as we sit here today, there's nothing in our bylaws that covers anything about a shared facilities director or so on and so on. It strictly pertains to PBCC and nothing else.
This
correct.
is Permanent Building
That's correct.
Discussion Committee.
Anything else to board, Mr. Maloney?
Well, just one
Well,
thing.
excuse me, this bylaw change, whenever it is implemented.
Right.
Which of course takes town meeting action, but if it was on a town meeting, at that point, it's referring to the facilities
Correct.
department. Yes.
But as it stands right now, Article 27 does not stipulate anything in there
No,
about shared
the
facilities.
current one does not.
Would it make sense, Mr. Chairman, because I understand Mr. Plasko's concern, but I think this facilities department is going to come to be, and I think this is a pretty good document to go along with it and set up the PBCC to work in harmony with the facilities department. But would it make sense to take the next week and at least funnel through any recommended language changes that we wanted to make, that we've discussed already here, so that we come back at least with a document? We can't really, we can't do anything official with this until it goes to town meeting anyway. We can vote to put it on the warrant, and we've
Right.
got some time before we do that. But at least maybe we come to terms on what assuming the existence of a facilities department, this is the language of a PBCC bylaw that is meant to work in concert with that, finalize that, vote on it, with the condition that the town meeting approve it. Does that make sense?
To me, I understand your position.
So motion to table 1 week?
On that motion, Mr. Hajar?
Well,
I don't have a second on it anyway yet.
Okay.
Second.
I have a second.
I'm trying to see what additional week would get us. This has been in motion since, as you know, Tom, since June of 2018. So, and a lot of people have looked at the language, and this has sort of been, I know, the fine tuning. Alan does make a good point about flexibility with regards to emergency. Unless there's some other language that people have looked at this and said, well, I don't know that we cover this or that. If that's what you think the 1 week is going to add, then that's,
I do.
okay.
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's been recommended language changes. I just think probably we ought to get them all in the document and have sort of a final version of the bylaw draft.
Fine, I'll make,
You know, and
I have
then-
that's okay, Mr. Chairman. I'll make the change that Alan spoke of. Are there any others? I would hope people would.
Section 2, paragraph 2, about the PBC appointment shall include so-and-so and so-and-so, and kind of loosen it up, as Mr. Plasko was discussing.
Well, that's what the current one says too, so I mean, unless, you
Where
have to
does it
remember
say-
the concept of the PVCC, if you're gonna have citizen involvement, we're saying 7 members. There are 2 vacancies now. So question is whether that's even the right number or not, but say we stay with the 7. Out of the 7, I would hope you would want at a minimum is an architect and engineer. I mean, that's the whole purpose of these, the big projects that are gonna be over 1.5 mil, is you want that. So out of the 7, I don't think that's too much to ask. It's not like we're asking 3 out of the 7 to be architects or engineers. So I
Okay.
I don't
question-
see where it specifies professions in the current.
Section 2, second paragraph, starts
No, I mean,
PBC.
I thought you.
Existing?
I thought you meant, I'm sorry, I thought you were referring to the existing bylaw. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's the the new.
No, he said it's
Article
the same
27.
language as the existing, but I didn't see it
The
there
existing
either.
bylaw just says 7 registered
Right.
voters.
All right, I have a motion and I have a second to postpone for a week.
Just table it for 1 week, you know.
I have one minor, you probably consider it a silly question, but
There are no silly questions.
I like to split hairs on some of these things. Under 5, general duties, D, says like if we're looking for an owner's project manager, that the permanent building construction committee, which I assume basically turns out to be one vote, the majority of that board, will work with the facilities director in selecting an owner's project manager. What if they're at odds? Who's going to decide? I know we like to think everybody works, but what about the case when they cannot come to a decision?
So one of the challenges there is our PBCC bylaw predates modern procurement laws.
No, this is the new bylaw.
Right, but the whole process predates the modern procurement laws, so it really would be probably a function of the procurement officer, which is actually
Well,
the
the
town manager.
procurement, I would debate that with you. The procurement officer manages the process, not necessarily the selection choice.
So you're looking for somebody who breaks the tie, is that it?
That's
I
exactly what it
mean,
would be.
you know, we hope people work and they don't have it, but what if there's two
It's a stalemate between.
So you wanna
people?
say in the event where
Permanent
the-
building committee wants one, and the facilities director just thinks that firm, that person is bad from
Do
previous
you want to make it in
experience
the
with
event that that they cannot agree, the matter shall be referred to whomever? General manager, Board of Selectmen, St. Catherine's Parish
Or
Council?
maybe the client, whoever's project it is.
I mean, I
Should
could
be
see,
somebody. Should be
I could see that the challenge there is you have a PBC saying we want to go with project manager A, and then you have the facilities director who reports to the manager and the superintendent going C, and then so you're going to get a department head picking a third option. I just,
Hopefully they'd make a compromise
You
and
want to
come
leave the
together
language the way it
somewhere,
is and see
somehow.
how it goes?
cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Jha, how do you feel about that?
I would say leave it as is.
Right. Oh, fine, oh, the
I
select.
don't see in the current version, though, the requirement for an engineer. I know I didn't get that on my own.
Yeah, no, it's not
It's
there.
not something I would have thought of.
All right,
I
let's-
think, I think you might have had an old version, because I think it used to be in there
Oh, okay.
years ago, possibly.
That seems to be the problem around here lately.
Because I went
14
for two
versions of
expecting to
everything.
find it, and I couldn't.
Okay.
All right, if I can, I was prepared to vote on this tonight. There seems to be a few minor changes that may or may not be done.
So-
Mr. Maloney brought up some points.
Well, just to be clear, I'm going to add language regarding the 180 days unless there's an emergency or want some flexibility for the facilities, whatever. And 2, I need some feedback on the individuals that are going to serve, the membership. So,
So why don't we go ahead with the motion to table? As Mr. Maloney pointed out, it's not gonna happen till
That's
town
fine.
meeting, and there's no real rush that it has to happen tonight.
1 week delay is fine, Mr. Chairman.
I was going to put it off for 1 week.
Yep.
That way we can communicate with Mr. Hajar on specificity of language. It gives us,
Very
it gives us
minor
time to reflect on it. Maybe there's anything else we have in mind, we can communicate.
Unfortunately, sometimes you have to read these things 3 times, because as Mr. Hajar indicated, some of us, I know myself, had given some feedback, and yet afterwards, when you read it again, you find something you didn't see the first time. you know?
Right.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to put this off for 1 week. And at that time, there'll be some discussion relative to the minor changes. And in 1 week's time, we'll come back and hopefully vote this up or down one way or the other. Everybody understand that?
Yes, sir.
All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. 1 week from tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to manager's update, Mr. Mizuko.
First item for the board, as you know, we do need to replace our finance director, Tom McQuaid. I sent the board a memo outlining the process. If you'd like, I can briefly go through it and the recommendations. So we'd actually like to get the posting out relatively soon. The reason being, we want to make sure we have enough time out there to recruit a good candidate. We want to go through a good confidential interview process. We then want to bring that final selected candidate before the Board of Selectmen, probably sometime in late April, depending on how the timeline looks, late April or early May. That'll allow them to give their current employer about 60 days notice. Mr. McQuaid was very generous in giving us a little over 6 months notice. We would have the new finance director start, assuming a successful recruitment, probably sometime in the beginning to the middle of July. That gives them plenty of time if they want to take time off, if they want to give their current employer notice, which most professional candidates in the field of municipal finance are going to want to give their current employer at least some notice. We would want that courtesy, and whereas we have the option of extending that courtesy, we would like to do so. We would put a panel together consisting of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, myself, and my recommendations are the assessor, Tim McDonough, our member of the Finance Commission, the school superintendent, and as well as Jim Collins from the Light Department. We're sort of hitting all of the areas that have an impact on our finances, and of course we would be aided by the HR department, and the HR director would be part of the process. I would leave, of course, the choice of the 2 board members to the board. As you know, we have the statutory town accountant position, as well as we've created the finance director position, which we also want to name as the town accountant. So what I'd be looking for from the board is your approval of the process as outlined in the memo, with that one change that there be 2 members of the Board of Selectmen as the chair's determination there, and then we would reach out to the chair of the Finance Commission to see who they would like to add to the panel.
My request for those 2 would be Mr. Maloney and Mr. Plasko, if they so choose to take part. It's your call.
It's your call, according to the manager.
I'm willing, Mr. Chairman, you know.
Well, Mr. Maloney's willing. I'm kind of hoping you're willing
Yes,
also.
sir, if you're
So,
so.
if need be, I'll make a motion to that effect.
Have a motion to appoint as our representatives Mr. Maloney and Mr. Plasko.
Second the motion.
And
can I-
Mr. Jarrett seconded the motion
And endorse the process?
and endorsed the whole process as determined by Mr. Mizuko. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
I have 3 other quick items, if the board would indulge me with just a few minutes. The first one, just an announcement for everyone at home. As you know, the Light Department's new facility on Access Road is open. You still pay your bills here at Town Hall. We have gotten, the Light Department has been getting calls from quite a few residents, particularly some seniors, and we've gotten a few here in the office. If they're questioning that they now pay their bills up there, you do not. You still continue to pay your bill at Town Hall, as you always have. You can go there if you have a problem or a service issue. New registrations go to 136 Access Road, but you continue to pay your bill at the treasurer's office just as you always have. There is no change to where you pay your bill for the Light
So
Department
that's
building.
both light and broadband.
Correct.
Thank you,
You
sir.
still pay your water and sewer bill here at Town Hall as well. The 29th of February, we'll be having an open house at the new Light Department facility to show it to the public. We'll be getting more information out about that. I have a promotion to announce. After we went through an internal search process, as the board is aware, Mark Schubert, our longtime building commissioner, is retiring sometime in March. I have promoted Matt Walsh, the assistant inspector, into that position. He will officially take over at some point in the early March. We'll then be posting his position as the assistant inspector. So congratulations to Matt Walsh. He's served the town well for many years, and he'll serve us very well in his new capacity starting sometime in March. And last but not least, we received notification today that we have been awarded the Commonwealth's Green Community status, so we are now officially a green community. With that comes, for this year, $180,000 in grant money that we will be able to immediately apply to some projects that were in the budget, including 2 LED light conversions here in the town that we were going to have to borrow or otherwise spend free cash on. And the high school, I believe, has a project forthcoming this summer to install LED lights where they needed some additional money to cover the cost of the labor. We will be able to pay for those projects out of the Green Community's initial allocation, and in the subsequent year, we will see the energy savings from there. So kudos to everyone. It was really a team effort that brought this together. In particular, Paul Halkiotis and Pat DeShane in the planning office and Joe Collins in my office really brought this project to fruition, but there were a lot of other people, Paul Riccardi, Kathy Carney, who really got the work down for us to be a green community. So it's been a long road, but we're there, and there's $180,000 we have to show for it, and that's just this year. And that is all I have, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions from the board? Seeing none. Mr. Najjar, have you got anything to say?
Just a couple of items. One is, I know there's been a lot of correspondence going around about the Trails Committee, so I really would just like to thank all of them for doing the work. If anyone from town has gone on to the town's website to look at some of the documents they've put together, absolutely phenomenal. And I know that that committee has received calls from other towns that have been in existence with the Trails type of committee for a lot longer, and are congratulating Norwood for doing what it has done. So seriously, to Joe for leading the team, but he will be the first one to say, it's not me, it's all the people putting in time and effort. So my congratulations to all of them, including many of the town employees who have put in the time and effort to create so far at least 5 trail maps and more coming. Second is, Mr. Chairman, we were given a wireless telecommunication regulations document by by Jim
Mr. Collins.
Collins, that is our requirement to implement, because it has to do with the aesthetics of how these wireless things would be placed. And I think we need to really participate in getting a document approved before we're hit with some applications which I know are on the horizon, and we don't have anything that's going to govern how these are going to be treated. So I certainly can sit down with Jimmy. I've made a bunch of my own comments. I'm hoping others have done as well. But we need to have a document in front of us.
Mr. Plasko, sir?
You know, it's a good point. I remember reading it immediately and then putting it away somewhere, so.
Me too.
Is that something that would, get technical here, require public hearing, or we can just vote it?
No, it's just
We can
a
just vote it.
statutory regulation of the board.
So maybe you could do some further review with Mr. Collins and bring it back in a couple of weeks so we don't forget it?
Yes.
Would
Is that
request
what
Mr.
I
Ajada-
agree with that. I
request
think we
Mr.
have to
Ajada
depend
do
on
that?
Mr. Collins for the expertise and the information. We can have him in and,
Sure, what might be helpful is board members have any comments, if you just send them to Jimmy, that way he can sit down and we can review them, and we can review them with our legal team, and then bring back a consolidated document to the board.
Actually, can you get us copies? Because I put it aside, but who knows where I put it
We can,
aside?
we can get an additional copy
I
out to
can
everyone.
actually send, Jimmy sent me the Word version. I can send it out to everybody that we can
Thank-
mark them out.
thank
Send
you.
it back to
Thank
Jimmy.
you.
So that's fine.
anything else, Mr.?
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Plasko?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have received several calls requesting clarification about my service on this board. Apparently, last week it was reported in the Norwood Record that I was not seeking re-election. I am not up for election this year. With the good God willing,
Well,
will
then the
continue to
reports are
serve
correct.
throughout my term, and hopefully beyond, but at least until April of 2021. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That one, I lost my train of thought. I did see that too, and I just ignored it. That stuff happens. But anyways, just a comment for the public, if I could, that I this time of year see leaf bags on the curb. How do we tell people that we don't start picking up leaf bags again until after April 1st?
I'll knock on my neighbor's door.
I think you just did it, Mr. Howard, by letting everyone know we don't do it. We're having a little bit of an unusual winter so far, so.
Yeah,
I'm
but
sure
still, I mean, gee, every year it's this way. You know, you think people would get the idea of it, but they don't. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Maloney?
Just a couple of things, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Mizuko, we were talking a few weeks ago about the Complete Streets program. I know we all sort of took a crack at looking at the 43 projects and prioritizing them and other suggested action. Are we anywhere on that, on the sort of the amalgamation of?
Yeah, so we have the board's suggested changes, and then it was actually late last week, Chairman Bishop and I sat down and sort of took the consensus of what the board had some agreement on, working that into the document. If probably next week or the meeting after, we will have the DPW will have a new list. We've reorganized some of the items, and we'll have a memo that shows what's been changed, and then the board can take another look at it based on the feedback from all 5 board members.
Very good, thank you very much. Congratulations to Coach Amy Lepley and her staff of the Norwood High School girls varsity team. They will be in the postseason tournament this year. Not an unusual thing for the girls, but still, it's a great achievement. The boys, we don't know yet. They might not. So they're playing tonight, they're playing Friday, and we'll know about a week from tonight whether or not they made it, but we certainly hope so. Anyway, but the girls are in, congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, one more, please.
Go for it.
Thank you. And I lost it again. Jeez.
I mean, if the clock is running.
Okay.
I know, 8 o'clock. Oh, heck.
We can do it next week.
Mr. Plasko's demise, were you going to talk about?
Yeah. Let it go, Mr. Chair. I
Thank
lost
you.
it.
If you think of it in the meantime, just feel free to interrupt me. A couple of quick things. Over the last 2 weeks, we've had concerts presented by Concerts on the Common, the Winter Concert Series at the Norwood High School every Sunday afternoon from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. This past Sunday was just phenomenal. There were so many people there, and I think everybody had a great time. What I want to say is we still have 2 concerts left. This coming Sunday, and which is February 9th, and we have February 16th. The Sunday will be the Roy Scott Big Band, if anybody remembers that from last year. And the last one will be Tom Nuttall's Big Band. So again, both of those are going to be fantastic events. The older people seem to love it, and we have a good time there. So if the weather's permissible, by all means try to get there and show your support for that. Number two, we're looking for fence viewers in the town. We have an open position and have had an open position rather, not a physician, position for a fence viewer. What a fence viewer basically does is when there's property line disputes and fences and so on between neighborhoods, maybe some people say it's too high, this, that, or the other. This person goes out and tries to act as an ombudsman and tries to rectify the situation if he can. And if not, he brings it back to us at some point in time, I believe. So if you're interested in serving in the town in any capacity, feel free to notify this department, the Board of Selectmen, at extension 131, and ask and inquire about the position of fence viewer for the town.
One position I've never aspired to, sir.
What's that?
One position I've never aspired to.
Well, since you're not running for re-election, perhaps you'll
It's
consider.
It's a starting point.
That's very good.
Thirdly,
Does that need a motion, Mr. Maloney?
I'm losing it here. Next, I want to congratulate Matt Walsh. He's our assistant building inspector who is going to rise to the position of building inspector. And he's a great gentleman. He does great work, and I want to congratulate him on his promotion personally. And I want to thank Mr. Mark Schubert, as the manager said, who is retiring in March. He's done an excellent job over the years, and he's done it well, and I want to thank him for his service to the town of Norwood. Lastly, Debbie Homewood, candidate for this position, one of these positions here in the Board of Selectmen, apparently reached out to me yesterday or today and mentioned that people are calling her because she has resigned from the planning board. And they are wondering why she resigned from the planning board. Are you sick? And so on and so on and so on. So I want to explain to people that she has resigned from that position with intent to run for the Board of Selectmen. By resigning her position, it allows the planning department to elect an alternate member, which we did, I believe, last week. That alternate member will serve until the election takes place. At that time, he or she can continue on with their papers and run for re-election, or anybody else can also run for that job. So the reason she left is so she can run for one job and she has to resign the other. You cannot hold two positions in this town. So if she was elected to the Board of Selectmen, for instance, she would have to resign as the member of the planning board. That would leave a vacancy. And it would go beyond, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Plasko, but it would go beyond the election time. And if need be, we'd have to call for a special election, which costs roughly around $30,000.
Not in this case, Mr. Chairman, no. It would be filled by appointment.
Okay, we could fill it by appointment, and again, we'll be right back to where we started from. We would have an alternate until the next election a year from now. So, long story short, she's running for a selectman, and she has resigned a position. That position has been filled, and that's the end of that. So with that said, I have nothing else for this evening unless somebody else does. Mr. Howard, anything come back to you at all?
No.
That train has left the station. So I have a motion to,
Oh, my God.
I have a motion to conclude tonight's meeting.
Thank
And I
God.
thank you all for watching. We'll be back next Tuesday. Thank you all.
Aye.
Aye, 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 and aye.